Technology is a big part of my life. It's been my career. And art is sort of a passion project, and if we don't have passion projects and we don't have passion, we all die the same way. It doesn't really matter. I like to be involved in some philanthropy, which I think it's great because giving is an exhilarated feeling. When you can give. I wish I would be much richer so I could give more. I never buy something purely for an investment purposes. I have to like this work. And this is my advice to many. You have to like it. You have to be not necessarily always euphoric about every piece of art that you buy, but you have to be close to it. You have to really like what you buy.
Welcome to Vita Brevis, a podcast about business, art, life, and death. I'm your host, Carlos Cardenas. Here we explore how business, creativity, and philanthropy intersect through the lives of remarkable people. I talk with entrepreneurs and community leaders who are passionate collectors and visionary patrons to discover how art shapes their work, purpose, and legacy. Because life is short, but art is forever. Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm here today with a very esteemed guest, Mr. Max Dolgicer, a tech entrepreneur and art collector, but that brief description does him absolutely no justice. So, Max, maybe you can sort of fill that in a little bit for us.
As you said, I'm technology entrepreneur. I my background and my education are in technology, namely specifically in software. I graduated from Technion, which is a premier academic institution in Israel, which obviously is known for technology and entrepreneurship. So I'm very grateful that I was at the right place at the right time. My parents took me as a child to Israel, where I grew up. And you know since So when I came to US years ago, I basically came here with the intent to be technology entrepreneur. I joined a startup in San Francisco in enterprise software. It was sold 7 years later. Then I had my own company, which is fintech, which was sold 11 years later. So technology is a big part of my life. It's been my career. And art is sort of a passion project, which, and if we don't have passion projects and we don't have passion, we all die the same way. It doesn't really matter. So we better have passions. So art been a passion project. It's been an interesting run. I've seen the industry transform in some good ways, much more good ways than bad ways, but um, it's kind of interesting. And obviously, intersection of art and technology, it's a double passion projects for me, just because I understand well both of those industries. And so that's basically sort of about myself. I live in New York. I have zero plans to move to Miami. Um,
Ah,
you know, no, I'm sometimes it's good to be for me it's good to be contrarian. Whether this trend is a long-term trend or not, I think it's to be determined.
mm-hmm.
Part of me moving to US I just fell in love with New York, and I still like New York. I like to be a New Yorker. And I think it's very hard to replicate New York.
Well, New York, of course, is, the great city of immigration. The United States is, the melting pot, as we say. And, you moved to the US, I imagine, with a lot of ambition and a lot of plans for the future. A lot has been said about immigrant success stories. Does being an immigrant give you an edge in business?
No, I don't think so. I think what again, this is my opinion. Again, I don't think it's gave me an edge in the business. What gave me an edge in the business is an incredibly good education that I received in Israel and from a very premier, world respected institutions that called Technion. And that I think education gave me, I felt, some edge. um, and but again, it's a very competitive, technology is a very competitive field. But the short answer, I don't think it gave me an edge. I think education clearly played a big role, and ability to be an entrepreneur and also gave me a big those are ambitions, and ambitions needs to be sort of balanced with reality. So education helped me to balance it. You can have
Mhm.
ambition and without baking it up with anything uh, of a substance, but that was not the case. The fact is that I speak with an accent in New York, it's clearly was not a decrement for me, uh,
Mhm, mhm.
because it's so, New York, as America it's city and country of immigrants. But in some other cities, maybe it would be a hurdle.
Mhm. I ask because, you can sort of make this assumption that, things will be difficult. There's a language barrier, there's a cultural difference and things like this. But it's still phenomenal to see how many successful business people are, first or second generation immigrants. It's really, really interesting.
A lot of successful entrepreneurs with ambitions are successful, and I think it's just very good for the country. I think also um, the moment a person comes with a diverse background, it's like me or many other people.
Mhm.
It's an enriches the fabric, cultural fabric, business fabric of the country. So to me, this whole thing of what's going on right now with anti-immigration, it's just fundamentally wrong, and it's painful to view it. I religiously watch on Sundays when I can the Farid Zakaria GPS. To me, he is one of the top journalists. And obviously, I think he was born in Sri Lanka, but he did multiple pieces over the last couple of years about immigration and produced some numbers, which hard to dispute. It's not alternative numbers; those are hardcore numbers. It just proves how good the immigration is. I mean, look at the Google co-founder Sergey Brin. I mean, there are many others, and that's the reality. And I also think that immigrants are playing very substantial role in academic circles, from where some of the most innovative technologies coming, from hardware to Duke and etc., and not just Ivy League universities.
Going back to technology, tell us a little bit about your startups. I understand, well, you just mentioned that you founded a couple of firms and they both led to exit. Tell us a little bit about them, how they got started, and why you chose the entrepreneurial route in the first place.
Well, I chose, yeah. Well, one was an enterprise software company. It was not, I was very early employee. It was an enterprise software company. It was really more sort of allowed enterprise applications to communicate with each other through messages. So it was sort of um, peer-to-peer messaging. I think the technology was a little bit too early for where the state of technology across corporations and software companies was then. It was early 90s, but miraculously, it was sold in 2001, just before. Just before it started, dot dot com bust. And so that was a good exit. It taught me a lot. That good between good. You don't want to be too late, but I also don't want to be too early. So we were pitching to sort of embed software, sort of peer-to-peer messaging into some operating systems. So in lieu of doing so, I met Eric Schmidt, I met Paul Marantz, I think it's Marantz, who was the right hand of Bill Gates. Was interesting because we were sort of trying not to just sell the software to enterprises, to commercial companies, but also to software companies to embed in the operating system. Then sort of started more of a consulting company, um, which focused on integration for financial institution across asset classes. And we have done a project for a particular giant company on Wall Street. I was able to negotiate, so we own the IP, intellectual property, and it's was sold to another software company, who then was sold to another public company. Actually, it was sold to a public company, and then the public company was sold to another public company. And since 2013, I invest in um, either in um some early stage companies, sometimes very early, sometimes early. So very early would be friends and family round with a debit with a note, verse or like the first round or a second round, and very late would be sort of a pre-IPO. So that's basically an either. So I try to invest in software company in technology, in fields that I know, either enterprise, either consumer goods or some specific um, platforms, like art or fintech and those type of things. So that's pretty much what it is. So I'm very much in technology. I stayed in technology, but obviously I no longer code. I no longer develop. I don't no longer architect systems, but I stay in touch with technology, and it's relatively easy for me to understand uh, and position products and see competitions and things like this in the in technology. Mostly focused, as I said, on software.
Is it still your main day-to-day activity?
I don't really have a specific day-to-day activity. One day doesn't look like other day. Um, Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It's not my day-to-day activity. I am involved with some companies, which are at any given time. I'm involved with some companies which I'm interested to invest or invested already. Um, and art takes a substantial part of my day. So that's second big part of my activity a day, probably more than the first one. And then I have some other things. I collect not just art per se, but some other assets. And I also like I like to be involved in some philanthropy, which I think it's great because giving is an exhilarated feeling when you can give. I wish I would be much richer so I could give more, and I really mean it. I'm not BSing you. So yeah, so there are a few other activities. Obviously, I own some real estates that require some care. Yeah, I mean, I'm basically my day starts early and ends late, and ends when I need to go to some openings or art events or auctions, and unf- you know, unfortunately, they all start 6 to 8, and all the gallery dinners and events go 8 to 10 to 11. So sometimes I come back, I continue working for another hour.
When did you meet Holly Solomon?
You know, I met Holly Solomon, I think it's in 80s, uh, when I was sort of between Israel, Tel Aviv, and New York, and I went to a celebrate. It was an art dealer in Paris who no longer in this business was a great taste, and he dragged me to celebrate Chinese New Year in a Chinese restaurant. I forgot the name, and it was literally I used this restaurant before. I literally went from JFK with my luggage straight to this restaurant. So he sort of invited me to this dinner. It was a celebration Chinese New Year, which is fun. And I was sitting next to Holly, and Holly was sort of a legendary dealer around, and Sanabent and Castelli, and she was an important dealer, and she kind of was binary about people. She either liked you or not, and she would determine it right quickly. So she happened to like me, and so she invited me to her house on east side on 57th Street, very close to Mr. Chow restaurant. And I walked in and I still remember this exhilarating feeling. It's like Liechtenstein and Warhol doing her portrait and Avedon. And uh, it was just, and I'm looking at, and I'm like, this is great art. Now, and I'm sort of going through one of the reasons why I so much attracted to contemporary art, because when you go to Musée d'Orsay or you go to you see all those Cézannes and Monet, and it's beautiful, but it's not much to think about it. It does not trigger it does not trigger you to think about what this represents, and what, as opposed to this sort of one object versus another, what do they represent? uh, you know what exactly, uh, how it talks to you. So what I'm saying to you is, I like contemporary art because it's not it's not necessarily just very predictable and very beautiful, like Monet and etc. It's also do move me. So is actually old masters move me. But at the same time, I like contemporary art because it makes you think. It triggers some sort of conversation within yourself. And that's what I like. And I looked at it and I'm like, and plus it's beautiful, and so that's sort of, and I'm like, I actually like it, so I'm going to start collecting art.
Well, it speaks to a contemporary moment. It talks about, social political issues and, popular culture and, things that you sort of swim in, daily.
Yeah,
So contemporary art is, in dialogue with your day-to-day activities. And that's something that older art just, simply doesn't have,
yeah,
that kind of relevance to your daily activities. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
exactly the point.
In technology, efficiency, volume, and scalability really add value to these enterprises. In art, to the contrary, it's more about scarcity and inefficiency, right?
Yeah,
So, how do you reconcile these differences between, say, volume on one side and scarcity on the other?
yeah, it's a very good question. Once I had a lunch with one of the senior people at Gagosian. And I remember sitting, we had lunch in his office on 980 Madison. And he said, Max, art thrives on scarcity. And I thought about it, and it's actually true. But it thrives on scarcity only for, at any given time, only for artists who are really in demand, not just blue chip artists, but the artists who are on demand. And the artists who are on demand are sort of, if you think about it, it's really, some are stays there all the time, like Warhol, Basquiat, etc. But some other are come and go, and those are artists who are much younger, who are already blue chip. So the blue chip sort of layer of artists who are coming and going, it's very much always in some sort of fluidity. So, but yes, it is on scarcity. So if you take any given major gallery that has 100 artists, the 10, 15 artists, maybe even less than 15, are in substantial demand, where demand um, outstrips the supply. On another hand, there are some other artists where you have a little bit more balance scenario. Now, in technology, it's obviously about scalability, efficiency, etc. So I personally think that if you look at art industry 25 years ago, it obviously was very inefficient, much less accessible. You know, when I started to collect, people were mailing me transparencies, which is kind of, which is kind of mind-boggling, and it just was in '90s. So I think that the reconciliation sort of bring more efficiency and transparency and more accessibility um, to of art to new collectors and even in old collectors. So all the new collectors, I think technology played is playing some role. 20 years ago, when I started really, maybe in 2008, 2009, all the way to now, by now I would think that technology would play more role in art this in art industry in terms of making decisions, discovering artists, and etc. Than it is. But I think it's moving to the right direction. So you don't have to really it, art techs or art technology platforms are really the one that potentially can reconcile sort of scarcity with accessibility, and because everything is available right away, the question if you can really get it. As you know, the galleries are not, those 10 artists that are in demand, the galleries are very selective to who award those artists each time there is a new exhibition. So that's really sort of reconciliation. I mean, I think the reconciliation factor is sort of art tech platforms, and I think they still have a way to go.
One could have reasonably guessed that as a technologist, you would be interested in NFTs, digital, moving image, video based art. But on the contrary, clearly you have a strong sensibility for painting, pop, and conceptual strategies.
Well, I believe in NFT. I think there are strong use cases for NFT.
Mhm,
Um, I think the NFTs are there to stay. Obviously, the euphoria for now it's over because it was just very crazy. Um,
mhm.
um, I like, and again, if I walk into MoMA and I see a Rafix work, it's I like it. It does make me. It moves me. It's no question about it. It does not move me. I don't get a goosebump when if I would walk into Byler Foundation and see, years ago, Mark Rothko exhibition, rooms full of his, not just his paintings, his masterpieces. So I think it just goes with the fact, I been around art industry for so many years, and so it's I'm very visual person. I make decisions almost on the fly if I like something or not. So when you see a regular painting or regular sculpture or regular neon, I know right away if I like it or not, but it does not mean that I dislike moving objects or I dislike people. I do like it. I think it's interesting, and as there clearly is the cases in NFT. One of the collectors of NFTs told me once, and that was a few years ago when NFT, it was a big euphoria about NFT. He said, "Listen, 80% of my life I travel. I'm an entrepreneur. I travel across the world 80%. I would like, most of my art in my house, in my apartment, I only can see 20% of the time. So NFTs I can see and they are unique for me and I can see them any minutes that I want it. So that's an interesting perspective. I kind of liked it. So I do like NFT. It just hasn't been part of my main interest of collecting. Now, if I went to Art Basel, I never missed. I expect that Art Basel will give me an award, and because I never missed single Art Basel Miami. I have missed in the last 20, since 2002 or even earlier. I have missed some Art Basel, which I still think is by far the best fair in the world, at least for me. But when I think about this, so I went to Art Basel Miami in December 25. Obviously, the most fascinating were were people's figures. You saw it, correct?
Yeah, the dogs.
The dogs. I mean, yeah, I like the idea. I like the execution. It was controversial for some people. For me, it wasn't. And it's once Ilya Kabakov, who unfortunately passed away, who is probably one of the most celebrated Russian Ukrainian artists, um, and he told me once that art creativity thrives on conflicts. And so this is just an example. For some people, those dogs were probably a no-go, but for some people, it was a go. Would I wanna buy one? Yes. Would I spend 100,000 on it? No.
So a little while ago, we were talking about online platforms and how they can help to kind of democratize and grow the art industry. You have some firsthand knowledge of this. Tell us about Artsy. I understand that you were an early investor in Artsy. Tell us a little bit about that experience and how you think similar platforms can help, you know,
Yeah.
evolve the economy.
Yeah, I invested, my own personal money, relatively early. You know, uh, one of the founders of Waze, the traffic application, Uri Levin, when I talked to him once that I invested in Artsy, he looks at me, he thought that I'm crazy. And he said, "Why would you do it? It's such a small industry and it's for so few people." And and then he answered himself. He said, "Probably it's a passion project." And I said, "Uri, you got it right. It's still my fascination with art and tech." So I it was interesting experiences. I think I've been quite close to the management team. Obviously, the entire management team, with exception of maybe one or two person, are gone long time ago, and it's been quite a turnover. It's been an interesting experience. I mean, was interesting experience. Some calls that are made were right on the money. Some calls were not. The fact is that I'm not even sure that they are. It's been a rough road for them, but nevertheless, they build a brand. They spend by far much more money on brands and technology, and which was, you know, to be determined if it was the right call or not. At some point, they decided to catch up. So for me, it was an interesting experience in terms of the really some decision making in terms of the nitty gritty things of timing, when to start supporting, like buy now, make an offer. Um, uh, so it was an interesting experience. I think by default, they're sort of the most known art platform where you can discover art, see a lot of art. You can sort of see what galleries have to offer, and what and you can buy art. And they do have a lot of users on one. So that's a good thing. So by default, they became sort of the default. I mean, they became a default platform, a premier platform for people to discover and buy art, um, and anything within between. The reality is that the high-priced art is still very much controlled by auction houses and by the galleries. But and we're talking about the 7 digits and up, and the 8 digits and anything in between art. Um, so to me, they served a very good purpose. They're still serving a very good purpose, but it feels like that mission is far from being complete. I'm not talking about Artsy, but I'm talking about in general, sort of. They has to be. It will be another platform to be determined who it will be, where will be more collector focus, maybe less gallery focus, and um, it's. Uh, we'll see who it will be. So I think the last chapter in sort of evolution of art tech to make art more accessible and more discoverable and for different levels of collectors, I think it's still not written. But clearly, art played a great role. But again, when Artsy started to compete with ArtNet in terms of the gallery subscriptions, the ArtNet was saying, "Well, we're 30 years old company. 30 years old company in technology, it's a decrement. It's
Mm-hmm.
clearly decrement in my view. So for Artsy,
Yeah.
they've been around 14 years already, and
Mm-hmm.
the fact that th- where they are right now, it just shows how difficult is to crack sort of the art slash tech, the art tech space. And I think the
Mm-hmm.
reason is because the galleries keep a very strong control over artists and the other ecosystem players.
Well, let's talk about that. And you just sort of mentioned that there's so much data available now, auction records, 30 years of auction records on ArtNet. And this leads to much more transparency, right?
Mhm.
There's some other new platforms. I don't know if you've heard of Arthur Analytics.
Which
It's
one?
sort of like an Arthur Analytics.
Yeah, I saw. I
It's
heard. Yeah, I heard.
it's like an ArtNet database, but I mean, for now, it's free. Anyhow, this transparency, it used to be an unfair advantage for dealers who sort of controlled all of the kind of information, all of the sort of market intelligence. So, has this democratization of the data has it led to a more efficient market?
Yes, I think the short answer is yes. Again, remember, ArtNet still has what perceived to be a golden standard for the for auction records, um, just because of the quality of data. But right now, you can get a lot of it for free. Artsy has art, data for Artsy has a data for auction records for free. I have developed, not me, but some of my engineers overseas. They have developed this. Doesn't cost me anything. I can look at it, the data, and at different angles and different cuts, and make some decisions. So to me, yes, I think it made the price data auction database made it more transparent. I use auction records pretty much every day. Now,
Mm,
that being said, auctions roughly represent 50% of the industry, maybe even less. And the other ones, the private treaty transactions between the auction, even within when auction is one of the represents a seller or a buyer, are not published, and all the private deals, secondary market. If this data would be accessible, I think at this point it's a pipe dream. That would be very very good. Would represent much more efficiency. So some galleries send you the presentations, the dossier with pricing. Shockingly, some galleries still not. And then the question really becomes why not? And again, I do not see a lot of progress. Pricing transparency is the key. And so for half of the market of this, it's not a huge industry. Auction records are public. You have a lot of data, but the other half, probably it's even more than half, you don't have a lot of data. And to me, as somebody who will be able to capture and create a database of private dealings, I think that would help a lot. Now, if I get the deck, if I get the deck from, you know, let's look at 6 months from now, Art Basel, Basel. So I get dossiers, or basically the presentation, many, many galleries. Some don't publish the prices, and they're like, oh, tell us what you're interested, we'll give you a price. Well, you know, I'm not exactly Elon Musk, or even Steve Cohen. So to me, price plays important role in some of the decisions. So it would be nice to have the pricing. And in my views, there were very little progress were done. Was it's made there?
Yeah, opacity still seems to be, to their advantage.
Yeah,
Um, so
very opaque.
going Oh, of course, absolutely, it's by design.
Well, absolutely, and I think it's wrong.
Continuing on the market here, so as you know, the market has been very, very soft. We're probably down, maybe 20%, give or take, in the last 2, 3 years. Since I guess fall 2023. But on the flip side of that, you might say that we're in a healthier market right now. Maybe the conversation is more about the objects and less about the dollars and cents.
Mhm.
So, do you think we're in a is it a negative situation, or is this like a healthy market right now?
I think it's a healthy market, to be sort of without being too wordy. I think it's a healthy market. I think it has well-defined consumers and well-defined suppliers. I do think it's a healthy market. I do not believe it's a recessionary market, because I think, when I had the privilege to attend this last November, this Christie, Sotheby, and Philip sale, I mean, they did well, especially Sotheby and Christie. Sotheby was all the fanfare, obviously because of the Whitney Museum and because of the building, did extremely well. Christie very quietly at the same location did, maybe 20 or $30 million of trade less, but still in high 600s. So to me, yeah, they were exceptional collections. But if you take out the Lauder collection, it's I would probably argue that Christie's pretty much did even better than Sotheby's, because the big part of Sotheby's sale was actually the Lauder collection. But what I'm saying is, I think I think the measure of the health of the market, and I always held this opinion quite strongly, it's a day sale, not the evening sale. Evening sales, a lot of lots are guaranteed. It's a really very specific uh, market where very limited amount of players. When we're talking about, 8 digits, etc. So the addressable space of buyer, it's not really skewed towards the real world. I think day sale, it's a real measure of the health of the market, and I think the day sale, I haven't followed Phillips as closely, but Christie and Sotheby, I was there for a whole day, did extraordinary well. It was almost,
Yeah.
and to me, this is a real measure of a market. Uh,
Yes, yeah. Well, the day sales, that's where all the volume is. The evening sales are, for show. That's where the headlines come from, and they use it more as, marketing and communication as opposed to, deep volume sales. Before we got on, we were talking about Emmanuel Perrotin a couple of years, global gallery originally based in Paris. We had mentioned that a couple of years ago they sold. I don't know the details of this, but they sold to private equity. What are your thoughts on that? You think we might see some more of that?
I do. Galleries, it, with all with all the publicity, talking about the major galleries, if they do want to expand more and have more distribution channels, it's a very costly. And by definition, the brick and mortar galleries, by definition, carry a lot of costs, as Sotheby's, as Christie's, and etc. So when you see, multi-billion-dollar sales, then the question: what are the profit margins of auction houses in those galleries? In my view, obviously, the galleries' profit margins are much higher than the auction houses. I'm talking about the major auction houses, but at the same time, so if they want to expand and expand in terms of the distribution, locations, brand, I think I will see more. Yes,
They're going to need the outside capital.
yes. I was not surprised that Emmanuel Peloton sold part of it to private equity. But if you look at the restaurant business, what's being created, it's a restaurant groups, and a lot of restaurants are being right now managed, financially injected by private equity groups, which is astonishing. So here, obviously, we're talking about art on a luxury pyramid is clearly on the top. If or one of the first places, I think it will be. Yes. So the short answer is, I do believe it will be more galleries who will sell to private equities part of it, and probably will retain control.
It's interesting, because we had said a little while ago that it's not a huge industry. We're not even at $60 billion a year globally. Private equity, they're sort of, looking for, the high volume and the high margins. And, I'm just wondering if some of these, private equity investors are going to, be in for a bit of a surprise. Sotheby's keeps going from public to private and it changes hands all the time. And, it's up and down. I think small galleries, medium galleries, advisors, secondary market galleries, the big auction house. It's a tough business.
It's
It's a
very,
very, very,
very.
yeah.
When I started to get even deeper into art industry, um, a few years ago, my daughter worked as David Werner for a few years before she went to law school. I remember how she told me she's clearly understand the art industry, the inner working. She said, and it still resonates with me. She said, "Dad, art business is a very tricky business," and it is, quote unquote.
And at the end of the day, you have to have the passion for the objects, for the people, because the economics are going to be disappointing. I mean, they can be positive, but it's hard to bank on that. These are not financially engineered products. They're products of contemplation.
So one of the questions that I still, it's kind of a lingering question over years that above my head. I understand how, Gagosians of the world sell a lot of the exhibitions, of their exhibitions, and not just artists who are hugely in demand. That part I do understand. I also do understand how Gagosian of the world selling artists who are not so much in demand. They selling it because uh, it's a it's an approval, it's a stamp of approval by a gallery. That's, if Gagosians of the world are representing and exhibiting and selling this artist, it should be good for me, and you know, uh, and that's pretty much. I also understand this on the buying side. A lot of people who are buying it, it's not exactly their last. They don't go to bank and get a line of credit to buy art. They don't. What I still don't understand, how the lower tier galleries sell art of artists who are not widespread in demand. That's something that I still do not understand. Obviously, I'm not privy to their books. I don't know how profitable they are, but uh, it's a, it's a, it's not it's very cost and efficient business, and unless you your landlord is your partner, or you own the space or the building. So this is something that I still do not understand, and a lot of those galleries who are like second tier, third tier galleries, not the Gagosians of the world, they they do this, a lot of it because of the passion, because they truly like art. And, you know, I want obviously them to continue because a lot of those galleries are discovering artists that before they becoming blue chip and before they go to Gagosian. So this is a question that I still don't have an answer, and I'll just reformulate it. It's just the question: how the galleries who are not the top 20, 30 galleries, how sort of lower tier galleries with all the cost and efficiencies, and how they sell artists that are not the Rashid Johnson of the world, not Andy Warhols of of the world, it's not baskets of the world. That's something that I still don't completely understand, because with art, if it's not blue chip, or even sometimes if it's blue chip, because the markets change very quickly in art. Um, it's take few auctions to go um, from being very in demand to much less in demand, and I still don't understand how those galleries can survive. I mean, many of them running those galleries on passion, which is obviously something admirable. Um, an example, by the way, and I shared this example with Katya Kazakina. I spoke to her after a um, after an auction. I think it was September. I think it was September last year. It was a Dan Collin work, um, that basically the text was "Holy shit." Years ago, it was at the evening sale. It sold for, if I believe correctly, for $300,000. So let's assume it's hundreds of dollars, hundred thousands of dollars. At Christie's, at the auction last year in September, and I think it sold for $12,000. It tells you a lot how things can change. And again, the person who sold it probably did not care much, and maybe he or she did it. He probably, I don't know if he needed for a tax break, to a tax deduction, whatever it is, but it tells you a lot how you can go from the evening sale to the last lot at the day sale, not even the major auction season, because September it's a midterm auctions.
How many years between the peak and the trough there? That was less than 10 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was less than 10 years for sure. And if you think about it, so it tells you a lot, and how volatile the industry is. And, that's the reality. We just have to take it the way it is. I never buy something purely for an investment purposes. I have to like this work. And this is my advice to many. You have to like it. You have to be not necessarily always euphoric about every piece of art that you buy, but you have to be close to it. You have to really like what you buy.
Very wise words, Max. That's an excellent place for us to stop. Max Dolgicer, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Carlos, thanks a lot.